begin? Where is the beginning of my impulse to want to use my strength, or to want to move towards something, to want to express myself? You know, how does that impulse gets activated? So imagine you see an event outside of you at the moment in the news. There are so many events that have an impact on me, right? Or you are walking down the street, or your family, in my family, there was a lot of events of violence, right? Physical and psychological violence that happened to me, or that I saw outside of me, but I was an observer of them. So any event that I have been an observer of, or it had happened to me, and I have not been able to express the impact, the first thing that happens in an event like that, it's an impact, right? A whole process of emotions, fear, confusion, anger, pain, frustration, right? There is a whole process of emotions. And the first thing that happens is an action or an event that I feel is unjust, or is abusive, or is violent, that causes so much pain, and that goes against my feeling of justice, either internally or consensually, in terms of consensus reality, legally. It goes against legal justice, for example, but it can also go against my internal feeling of justice, my internal feeling of safety, my internal feeling of freedom, right? Safety and freedom are very related. When I feel my safety and my freedom, it's threatened, I immediately feel a sense of injustice. And it can be a social event, a political event, or it can be a personal event, a relational event, right? So an event like that occurs. And one of the first things that happens, if you see there, I wrote it I did it by hand this morning, because my documents are in another computer. I'm using an old computer. So if you see there is like a huge, it's like in Processwork, we talk about hotspots. A hotspot happens in that moment, because suddenly we have a huge experience internally and externally, an impact. And in that moment, that feeling of a strength, reaction, response wants to come out, whether it's a scream, cry, defend myself, put a boundary, say no, right? There is a whole experience that happens there, a hotspot with multiple experiences. And most of us marginalize that place. Most of us marginalize it. You could say that we live in a society that teaches us to marginalize impact in order to survive and in order to function. If you see here to the side, functioning, move on, survive. So most of us, when we have such a strong impact in our lives that we feel is abusive, we decide to move on. We decide to marginalize that hotspot and to survive. And we do it for many reasons. We do it because I am afraid to lose relationships. I do it because of shame. How could this happen to me? I do it because my family will be against it. It is socially unacceptable to speak up about this. We do it because of feelings of internally feeling like we have no allies, we are alone, right? So there are many reasons why we marginalize the impact. But that is one of the key moments with violence, the beginning of the cycle of violence, the beginning of me going into victim, aggressor, and rescuer. In that moment, I completely decide that that event did not happen. And if it happened, it's not possible to say anything about it, and it's not possible to express it. And one of the key things around violence is that we lose in the vector of violence, in the journey of going into that experience of impact of violence, we lose our metaposition, meaning our ability to speak about the event, our ability to reflect, is something that many schools of thought talk about the witness. We somehow marginalize the witness internally and externally. We no longer support the speaking out of what has happened. And we decide that we are going to function, continue to live our lives, continue to move on. In the moment that we do that, is the beginning of something that psychologically we talk about dissociation. We start to dissociate, yeah, from all of that experience, and the beginning of trauma happens. That's when post-traumatic stress disorder starts to happen, depression, anxiety. We start to develop a whole internal world of experience that we basically do not want to honor. We drop the witness. There is a very beautiful sentence that says, recovering the witness is the beginning of healing the story of the cycle of violence. When we recover the witness, when we are able to tell the story of the impact of what happened. When I work with very extreme situations of violence, most people have lost their witnessing. Most of us have ignored the event for different reasons. And that is the beginning of going into those different roles of drama and survival. And it's very painful to do this to ourselves, because in that moment we become less sensitive to violence. That's the beginning of normalization of violence as well. There is something that there has been lots of studies around. The more I oppressed and marginalize the impact of abuse and the impact of a violent event, and normalize continuing to function in the world, unconsciously I normalize violence. I say, it's okay. It wasn't that bad.